So I've been shooting with the Sony FX30 for going on quite a few months now. The more I keep shooting, the more I realize that I just like a minimalist setup. What I've found is I've had the big kits. I've had the Blackmagic Pocket 6K all rigged out with the V-mount and all that stuff, and it just gets daunting after a while. My goal has been to condense everything and try and get it as small and compact as possible, as well as versatile. So I don't want to have a hassle every time I'm going from handheld to tripod work to gimbal work. So today, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through the products that I use for my Sony FX30, and that's for doing events or doing weddings, real estate, just content in general, restaurant shoots, and I'll kind of explain to you why I chose the ones that I did and how I use them and how I rotate between all of them. So we're gonna start with obviously the camera body, which is the Sony FX30 here. The cage that I chose was the Tilta cage here. I chose this just because I've worked with Tilta cages in the past, and I like the streamlined look of them, and they just always work, and the grip always feels really nice. And it also includes another piece on the top that you can have on if you don't have the top handle or don't want to use the top handle, and I'll show you how I use that in just a second. I also chose the black version of this just because I think it looks better, and this is the top piece that I'm talking about. This goes right on the top here, and essentially what it does is it adds another cold shoe and it adds a NATO rail to the top. One thing that actually really annoyed me about this particular piece is that if you can see here, the little Tilta nameplate there, it's very tight in there. So the NATO pieces that you choose to use, you have to be very careful of because it will hit right here. And I had a problem with that because I had one of the other Tilta top handles that I wanted to use with this, but it does not fit. It fits backwards if you put it on backwards, but I don't know, I'm kind of OCD and that's annoying to me. This small rig monitor handle, I really like how quick and easy you can get the monitor on and off with this. So I just put this on here just like this. Slides right on, locks into place, and boom, you got that on there, ready to go. And this is a very important piece. Hollyland was actually nice enough to send this out to me to try out for the last couple of weeks, and I've been able to shoot a couple of real estate shoots with it, a couple of events, which more importantly, that's what I really use these for, and a couple of like testimonial style corporate videos. And this thing has been amazing. And I really like the build quality of it. I really like the interface. It's very, very easy to use. The one thing that I hate with any monitor is when you're trying to touch or pick something and it just feels like laggy or whatever. With this, you don't have any issues with that. Now this monitor is actually 1,000 nits, and it's not super bright if you're out in like broad daylight. It is a lot brighter than the actual screen on the Sony FX30 or even the Sony A7IV, which is filming this right now. So it's definitely useful, and it's also easier to nail your focus. The focus peaking in this Mars M1, it's a lot better than the focus peaking in the actual Sony body itself. For my HDMI, I like these sort of coiled cables. I like a very clean look, and I hate when I have to like roll things up and everything, so I decided to go for this one. And with this cage, you don't have any issues at all as far as not being able to access things or things getting in the way. So here we have this fully on there with the Mars M1. And one great thing about the Mars M1 as well is it has all of the features that you would want in a monitor. It has the false color, the waveform, the vector scopes, basically everything that you expect to get in a nice camera monitor, you get in this camera monitor. And the battery life was great. I filmed an entire, it was like a 3-hour event outside. It lasts, I think I was at like 50% battery, and I basically left it on the entire time. I didn't leave the camera running the entire time, but I didn't turn the monitor off, I just left it running. And I didn't have any issues at all with battery life. I was probably at like maybe 50 or 45% after a 2.5-hour event, 3 hours. think it was tops 3 hours. The only thing I'll say that I dislike about this monitor is that, and I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but what happens is when you decide what features you want, like if you decide you want focus peaking, you decide you want to use the LUTs on the monitor, or if you want to use waveform, vectors, whatever you choose to pick. Once you turn it off and turn it back on, you have to re-choose those things again. It like doesn't save your settings in. And I don't know why it does that. I've never had a monitor that did that before. So it's very confusing. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. Hopefully, maybe someone out there uses this monitor and can tell me if there's something I'm missing. I have searched the settings quite a few times, and for some reason I can't seem to find anything. But other than that, yeah, I mean, the build quality is great. The fan, I know there was a lot of people talking about the fan and it being kind of a nuisance. If you're recording like on camera, if you have like a Rode microphone or something like that and you're recording on camera, it might pick it up. I haven't found it to be that much of an issue unless you're shooting a Martin Scorsese film, but most of us are just trying to catch ambient noise outside or doing an event or something like that. So for me, it's not really a big deal. Now, the lens of choice that I love on the Sony FX30, it's like my go-to lens now, is the Sony 24mm G Master 1.4. This thing is great on this camera. I love that focal length. It gives you an equivalent of 35 focal length, and I just find that focal length to be great. It's perfect for when I'm running on a gimbal at events and stuff like that. It's tight enough that I can get decent interactions and still be a little bit of ways away and not have to be straight up in their face with like a 16 or a 24mm. This is my typical setup for like events or anything that I'm just kind of going and shooting content. And the thing I like about this particular setup is that I can be ready for gimbal work in a few seconds. All I have to do is disattach this, take this, slide this right off, and there we go. I'm ready for putting this right onto a gimbal. The one thing I will do if I am going to be using the top handle for the FX30 is I'll have to remove this top piece here. That NATO rail is off on the top. And now what I'll do is going to grab the top handle for the FX30. Now I have this on there with the top handle, and I specifically have this on here if I'm doing like interviews and doing like podcast shoots or anything like that. I've been doing a lot more podcast shoots lately, and what I'll do is I'll just record straight into this part right here, into the handle, instead of having to have an external recorder like the Zoom H4n Pro that I have. And it just saves me an extra step in post-processing that I don't have to sync up. And then I get one of these little friction arm things. I got this one, it's a cheap one. It's honestly not the best in the world. I'll just put this right onto the end of the handle here. All right, so as you can see, it's right there on the end of the handle. And there you go. Now you have full setup. Got the top handle ready to go with any external audio. Or if you're just someone who likes shooting with a top handle, which can be nice at times, like this is a pretty decent setup if you like shooting like this. I just prefer to have that NATO rail on the top and have the monitor on there just so that it's a little bit more streamlined and it's less bulky. As you can see, it's quite a bit more bulky with this setup. But this is a great setup. And like I said, it's very minimalist. And once again, I have this on here. It's a big, nice setup. You can have documentaries. You can add a mic onto here if you want to. And then if I'm ready to go onto a gimbal, I just unplug the HDMI, unscrew these, pull this out, and there we go. Ready for gimbal work that quick. If you have any questions at all about this setup or anything that you would do differently to help me streamline it even more, I'd love to hear it. So reach out in the comment section. You can totally reach out to me on Instagram, and anybody who's ever reached out to me on Instagram will know that I am very responsive. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to help anybody out in any way possible. Please hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this. I'm planning on doing some more BTS stuff, a lot more behind the scenes of how I'm shooting real estate. Thank you. I'll see you guys in the next one.